Welcome to the InnoGuide podcast, where we share the works of authors and mentors to guide innovation. I'm your host, Bob Boudelier. This podcast, my website, my newsletter, and my community are focused on helping you discover the secrets of innovation in the age of AI. Since I don't rely on paid ads, I want to thank customers who bring me into their programs as a technical product accelerator, working alongside their teams to help them develop products smarter and faster without adding risk, while bringing human-centered AI skills into their organizations. You can learn more at innoguide.net. In this episode, number 104, we'll be sharing part 2 of The Long Tail, Why the Future of Business is Selling Less of More by Chris Anderson. Second half of The Long Tail moves from explaining why niche markets became economically possible to examining what happens once abundance becomes the norm. Chris Anderson looks at the new tastemakers who help people navigate endless choice, the economics that allow hits and niches to coexist, and the cultural shift that occurs when people are no longer limited to whatever few gatekeepers decide to place in front of them. He also explores the paradox of choice. When everything is available, the real value moves from access to filtering, recommendation, and helping people find what is actually relevant to them. This may be even more important today than it was when this book was written. AI is becoming the new tastemaker, the new filter, and increasingly the new interface between customers and the marketplace. It can guide people toward highly specialized products, expertise, and communities, but it can also concentrate attention around the sources it understands and trusts. As we move through these final chapters, listen for how Anderson's ideas extend far beyond music, books, and entertainment. They now apply to marketing, education, healthcare, and professional services, software, and almost any field where AI can help people navigate an almost infinite screen of choices. So let's get started. So we're going to start off with long-tail economics. Of course, everybody loves economics. This is actually kind of fun because we're going to talk about one of the most profound economic shifts of our time, something that's completely reshaped how retail works, how we discover products, and ultimately how businesses make money. He starts with a name you've probably heard of before, whose discovery changed everything. Vilfredo Pareto. Remember the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule? Well, here's the history. Back in 1897, this Italian economist was studying wealth distribution in 19th century England and made a startling observation. He found that roughly 20% of the population owned 80% of the wealth. What's remarkable is that this ratio held up across different countries and different time periods. It was almost like a law of nature. Years later, a Harvard linguist named George Zipf, Z-I-P-F, discovered the same mathematical principle popping up everywhere. In word frequency, in city populations, animal species distributions. This wasn't random. It was revealing something fundamental about how success works. Success breeds success. Wealth accumulates, popularity concentrates, and inequality emerges through variety, reputation, and network effects. We call this a power law distribution. But here's what fascinated Chris. The natural pattern gets dramatically distorted by the real world's constraints. Look at Hollywood. Every year, roughly 13,000 feature films get shown at U.S. festivals. But distribution in theaters, that maxes out around 100 films per year. Why? Because getting a film into theaters requires massive marketing budgets, distribution deals, and preferably some big stars. The economics of managing physical theater space are brutal. So films beyond the top 100, potentially excellent films that audiences might actually love, they essentially vanish from commercial viability. The natural long tail gets artificially chopped off. But what happens when you remove the distribution bottlenecks? Netflix changed everything. So did Barnes & Noble's online store and music streaming services. Suddenly, demand extended far beyond what traditional retail had ever suggested. In music, when streaming platforms appeared, the share of sales from the top 20 hits dropped from 80% to just 40%. Older catalog music, songs that couldn't possibly compete for shelf space in a physical store, started dominating revenue. But the 80-20 rule didn't disappear. It fundamentally transformed. Some things still sell better, sure, but in a low-cost digital environment, carrying everything becomes profitable rather than impossible. Now, how about the profit picture? The top 2% of products still drive about 50% of sales. The next 8% capture 25%. Bottom 90%, they split the remaining 25%. But profit margins, that's a completely different story. Because acquiring niche products costs almost nothing in a digital environment, their margins can actually exceed those of your best sellers, and that's where the real money is. Think about DVDs. In the Blockbuster era, new releases were loss leaders for retailers like Walmart and Best Buy. They'd charge $15 to $17 when studios were charging the stores $17 to $19, losing money up front to get customers in the door. Almost 80% of their sales happened in this unprofitable window. But older titles, far more profitable. This dynamic crushed specialty retailers. Netflix understood this intuitively. They deliberately understocked new releases to protect margins, which frustrated some customers but kept them profitable. And the transformation works in 3 ways. You can offer vastly more products with zero shelf space constraints. Sales spread more evenly between hits and niches thanks to better discovery tools, and profits exist at all popularity levels. The long tail stopped being a problem and became an opportunity. There's something even more subtle happening. Markets don't operate as a single popularity curve. They operate as nested curves, curves within curves within curves. Look at music genres. Jazz has its own long tail of artists. Within jazz, you have bebop, cool jazz, fusion, even within their own long tail. The same pattern appears in books and blogs in every category you examine. Recommendation systems and filters typically work powerfully within these niches, not across the entire market. An ambient dub artist might completely dominate their category without ever appearing on mainstream charts. This reveals a fascinating paradox. Powerful recommendation systems should theoretically make hits even more dominant, widening the gap between blockbusters and obscurities. Yet, we see the opposite. Flatter power laws, reduced inequality. The magic is that these filters excel within niches. They're less effective at breaking artists between categories. Finally, there's one more dimension to consider: time. All products decay in sales over time. Blockbusters fade, yet Google introduced something radical, a technology that functions as a time machine for content. By prioritizing relevance through incoming links rather than newness, Google gradually reverses the traditional decay curves. Older content becomes discoverable again. The History Channel documentary can outlast Twister in the marketplace of attention. The long tail was always there in nature. We simply lacked the tools to capture it. But now we have them, and that changes everything about how markets work. In this segment, entitled The Short Head, he starts by acknowledging something that might seem to contradict everything we've been talking about in the book. Hits aren't going away, not anytime soon anyway. And that's not a problem, it's actually essential. He knows this sounds strange coming from someone who spent considerable time celebrating the long tail, especially in this book. But even as e-commerce transforms retail, physical stores still dominate consumer spending. And we're fundamentally social creatures who crave shared experiences. More importantly, even in flatter long-tail markets, blockbusters still emerge. It's inevitable, and it turns out to be absolutely necessary for powering the recommendation systems that make online markets work in the first place. So successful long-tail businesses need to span both hits and niches. They need what he calls ultimate selection, the confidence that everything customers want exists in one place. This distinction is crucial, and he illustrates it with 2 music services that took radically different approaches. MP3.com launched with hundreds of thousands of unknown tracks and virtually nothing from major labels. It was pure long tail, but it failed spectacularly. Why? Because customers had no place to start. They faced an undifferentiated mass of mostly bad music with no familiar entry point. iTunes, by contrast, started by licensing mainstream hits from major labels first, then layered in the niche content on top. This gave customers a known framework for exploration, familiar stuff, and that's the difference between a dead service and a transformative one. Cities demonstrate this same principle at an urban scale. Population follows power laws, creating what he thinks of as the long tail of urban space. Dense cities concentrate dispersed demand in ways that smaller towns just can't. A button store district thrives in New York City, but nowhere else. This density allows subcultures and niche businesses to flourish where they'd have no chance in smaller communities. But let's go deeper into the economics of physical retail because the constraints there are brutal. The retail shelf itself is a marvel of optimization. Cubic foot capacity, stocking algorithms, demand curve analysis, meticulous vertical and horizontal positioning. Yet, it's extraordinarily wasteful. Monthly rent alone costs $26 to $33 per square foot of shelving. Layer in the overhead, the staff, utilities, shrinkage, insurance, and that 12 by 12-inch square costs at least $50 a month and must generate $100 to $150 in sales just to break even. This is back in 2008. These economics mean only the most promising products survive. This brings us to the fundamental constraint that digital retailers don't face. Atoms obey the laws of physics in ways that bits don't. Can of tuna can exist in only one place at a time. This forces physical stores into crude and flexible categories. But online retailers can dynamically recategorize products and cross-list items across multiple sections. A brick-and-mortar store can't reconfigure itself to match individual shoppers' interests. Even smart shopping carts with RFID technology can't overcome this basic problem. Walmart illustrates this perfectly. It accounts for 1/5 of music sales in America. Yet the typical Walmart carries only 4,500 CD titles. Compare that to Amazon's 800,000. That's just 2.5% of the approximately 30,000 new albums released annually. When he visited the Oakland Walmart, he found just two main music aisles. Entire genres like dance and spoken word were either missing or buried in catch-all categories. This paradox of plenty, seeming abundance masking actual thinness, reveals how shelf space tyranny distorts what's available. The root problem is ontology. How do you organize things? Fixed taxonomies like the Dewey Decimal System designed for 19th century America force everything into non-overlapping categories. Online retail's revelation that products can be recategorized infinitely on the fly has exposed traditional retail's profound inflexibility. When customers can't find what they want, they abandon searches and default to familiar brands. Physical retailers like Blockbuster have to force everything into rigid categories because shelf space is finite. But Google and Amazon operate completely differently. Google lets meaning emerge organically through links and searches. Amazon goes further with folksonomy, letting customers tag items however they want, then actually prioritizing these user-created categories over preset ones. The system even analyzes statistically improbable phrases unique to each product to create its own fingerprint. But the real killer for brick-and-mortar stores is geography. A ski shop in Miami makes no sense, not because nobody skis there, but because you can't concentrate enough local demand to justify the cost. This is the tyranny of physical space. 20% of Americans live more than 8 miles from a bookstore. Online retailers can serve all those scattered customers just as efficiently. Broadcast media faced similar constraints. Radio and television had limited frequencies and time slots. This created an economics of hits. You needed blockbuster audiences to profit from scarce airwaves. For a century, the principle was simple: scarce content and distribution, abundant attention. But now digital natives are rejecting this model, choosing niche content over formulaic flair. The tension is clear. When scarcity disappears, so should our obsession with hits. Understanding these constraints helps us see why the long tail matters and why the future belongs to those who embrace both the blockbusters and the niches. The paradise of choice. We're living in an age of unprecedented variety, and it's completely transforming how we shop. What once would have seemed ridiculous, an entire store dedicated exclusively to Scotch tape in multiple varieties, is now business as usual. Rice to Riches opened in Manhattan, selling over 20 flavors of rice pudding, and it's thriving. The numbers really do tell the story. Starbucks offers 19,000 different coffee variations, over 26,000 new food and household products launched in a single year, and the car market now features 250 different models compared to just 40 back in the 1960s. 3 major forces drove this explosion. Globalization created efficient supply chains. Demographic shifts pushed toward individualism. And the long tail effect allowed online retailers to stock vastly more inventory than any physical store ever would. But here's the question everyone was asking. Does unlimited choice actually help us? Barry Schwartz's influential book, The Paradox of Choice, argued it doesn't. His famous jam study showed that when shoppers faced 24 jam varieties instead of 6, purchase rates actually plummeted from 30% down to just 3%, even though more people were initially attracted to the larger selection. Yet, newer research by Sheena Lingar tells us something more nuanced. The problem isn't choice itself, it's how that choice is presented to us. When variety is properly organized through ratings, reviews, price sorting, and smart recommendations, customers generally thrive. Amazon sells over 1,200 jam varieties without overwhelming shoppers because intelligent curation tools exist online. Traditional stores simply lacked effective ways to display all this organizing information. The real lesson here is that more choice is truly better, but only when paired with useful information about those choices. Google demonstrates this perfectly by organizing infinite web chaos so your desired results surface first. Without proper organization, choice becomes paralyzing. With it, becomes liberating. This explains why professionals like wedding planners, real estate agents, and financial advisors have become increasingly valuable. They intelligently filter options aligned with what customers actually want. The paradox of choice ultimately reflects limitations in how choices are presented, rather than any fundamental rejection of abundance itself. So what about this niche culture? Let's walk through how niche culture actually works in practice. Back in the early 1980s, when disco was dying and people were literally burning records, something fascinating happened in Chicago. DJ Frankie Knuckles at the Warehouse Club started remixing old disco classics with European synthesizer pop and new drum machine beats, creating house music, a completely new genre born from rejecting mainstream commodification. What's crucial here is that house music emerged through two key forces: democratized production tools made recording cheap and accessible, and democratized distribution through clubs and warehouse parties. This created an information vacuum that DJs filled by acting as filters, instantly surfing the long tail through direct audience feedback. When people didn't dance, the DJs knew it immediately. As production costs dropped further, house fragmented into hyper-specialized genres like deep house and dub house. Record labels became tags, helping DJs navigate this complexity. Artists even used aliases, making the label more important than the artist's name. House producers embraced open access strategies, allowing remixes that complemented originals and created snowball effects within niches. This shift represents moving from or culture, hits versus niches, to and culture, where audiences simultaneously consume both mainstream and specialized content. Everyone inhabits some niche interest, no matter how mainstream they might appear. Virginia Postrel explains that diversity has always existed. We land on the tail of at least one statistical distribution, but we can finally act on those differences. We're leaving the water cooler era of shared mass content and entering the microculture where thousands of interest-based tribes form online rather than through geography. The news industry demonstrates this shift most dramatically. Blogs have democratized journalism. Experts in niche topics can now publish without institutional backing. Richard Posner notes that bloggers targeting narrow audiences outcompete mainstream media through specialization and superior error correction. Meanwhile, critics like Cass Sunstein worry fragmentation threatens social cohesion, warning against ego casting, personalized echo chambers. But I believe recommendation algorithms and hyperlinks actually encourage exploration rather than isolation. The blogosphere rewards curiosity and diverse sourcing. We've lost common cultural touchstones, but gained far greater exposure to diverse individuals through online interaction. We're reorganizing around shared interests rather than superficial mass cultural overlaps. Our virtual water coolers are now numerous and self-selected, allowing stronger connections with people who share our passions. Yes, this shift could theoretically push into some echo chambers, but human curiosity and nearly unlimited information access should ultimately foster open-mindedness. The blockbuster era wasn't inevitable. It was simply a product of 20th century broadcast technology. Before that, culture was primarily local. Going forward, it'll be affinity-based and massively parallel. Mass culture may decline, but common culture will persist. We'll simply share it with chosen communities rather than with everyone simultaneously. That's the promise of niche culture. The infinite screen. When YouTube launched in 2005, it did something remarkable, fundamentally disrupted everything we thought we knew about television's future. And when Google reorganized what was happening, acquiring the platform for $1.65 billion in late 2006, they weren't just buying a website. They were betting on a seismic shift in how people would actually consume video. Consider the scale. By spring 2006, users were uploading 100,000 videos every day. 100 million clips were being watched. That's 5 million hours of viewing, rivaling an entire medium-sized television network. But here's what really matters. Amateur content competes directly with professional productions and frequently wins. Think about what that means. Yahoo Music's video viewership alone would place it between MTV and VH1, time of the writing of this book. More people watch popular Jon Stewart segments online than live television. A two-person operation called Rocket Boom, made with basic equipment and a cardboard map, reached 200,000 homes daily. That's comparable to MSNBC's The Abrams Report, which had a multi-million-dollar budget and dozens of staff. The efficiency margin is staggering. Yet, here's the paradox. Television produces 31 million hours of content every year, yet makes almost none of it available. Distribution bottlenecks create rights issues, syndication complications, music licensing nightmares. WKRP in Cincinnati remains nearly impossible to release on DVD. But a new class of video created specifically for internet distribution without these encumbrances proves most entrepreneurial and rich with possibility. The internet is also reshaping fundamental conventions. That 30-minute television format, it exists purely because of distribution scarcity, not artistic necessity. Online content naturally diversifies. 3-minute clips, mobile snippets, longer features reflecting actual human attention spans rather than advertiser schedules. Mobile video will accelerate this fragmentation even further. Remember when the VCR seemed revolutionary? Video rentals shifted us from pushed to pulled media. Netflix increased available selection 1,000-fold. But the internet promises something almost inconceivable, gazillion-fold choice. And here's what he's learned. Every technology enabling greater selection faces ravenous consumer demand, because infinite choice, it turns out, is simply what we've always wanted. So now we'll go beyond entertainment. We're going to go beyond the world of music, movies, and books, and show you something equally powerful. The long tail is reshaping entire industries that form the backbone of our global economy. Let's walk through 5 compelling examples that demonstrate just how far this principle reaches. Start with eBay, which became a genuine retail phenomenon by embracing radical simplicity. With 60 million active users trading over $100 million every day, eBay operates as both a marketplace of products and a platform for merchants. The genius lies in distributed inventory. eBay doesn't hold any stock, sellers do. The company simply provides the platform, handles the filtering, and lets sellers manage everything else. The result? eBay generates $5 million in revenue per employee. Compare that to Walmart's $180,000. That's the long tail at work in retail. Now, eBay does have a vulnerability. Unlike Amazon, it can't standardize product information because the sellers describe items however they want. Of course, that's been corrected by now. They didn't have consistent SKU designations, and this prevented sophisticated recommendation engines and reliable search, which is precisely why competitors like Google's Frugal have been able to step in and extract that data to offer better product comparisons. But here's where things get really interesting. Take KitchenAid. Traditional retailers stock maybe 3 to 6 mixer colors. Online, you can choose from 50 different options. And every single color sells. Even colors nobody anticipated would be popular, like tangerine, become bestsellers. This reveals what he calls the latent demand, customer preferences that were always there but invisible in brick-and-mortar stores. So let's move into software and advertising, industries you might not immediately think of as long-tail candidates. When Mark Benioff built Salesforce.com as cloud-based software, he faced crushing pressure from giants like Oracle and SAP. Rather than compete head-to-head with new features, he realized something brilliant. He could grow downward. He could create a platform for hundreds of smaller developers, particularly in low-cost regions like India, to build specialized apps on top of Salesforce's infrastructure. Three forces made this possible. Development costs plummeted thanks to cheap global talent. Delivery costs collapsed when downloads replaced shipped CDs, and search costs evaporated through online communities. By 2005, Salesforce launched a marketplace where niche developers could sell specialized tools, performance review software, recruiting applications, running on Salesforce's servers. The distribution followed a perfect long-tail pattern, hundreds of applications, each selling to their specific niche. Then there's Google, which did something truly revolutionary. It applied the long tail to advertising itself, historically the most hit-centric industry you could imagine. Traditional advertising required expensive salespeople pitching to major corporations like General Motors. Google realized software could eliminate that cost. They created self-service, keyword auctions, where millions of small advertisers could participate at just 5 cents a click. Simultaneously, they democratized publishing by letting any blogger monetize content through algorithmic ad placement. Their CEO, Eric Schmidt, explained they deliberately built tools serving both extremes, massive enterprises and one-person companies previously shut out of advertising entirely. Google extended the advertising market to include 1 billion previously underserved businesses worldwide. The numbers here are staggering. Google's revenues exceeded $5 billion annually as of this printing, and we're doubling every 9 months. But here's the key insight. Most of that growth comes from the tail, not the head. What makes Google particularly brilliant is how it plays this game across multiple fronts simultaneously. Beyond connecting tail advertisers with tail publishers, Google revolutionized information aggregation by recognizing that one-size-fits-all simply doesn't work. Different searches need different answers. Maps work best for location queries, visuals for images, and video for video content. This insight led to vertical search, specialized aggregators optimized for specific niches. Google Local, Scholar, Maps, Product Search, News, Book Search, Video. Each offers unique presentation. Each pulls from relevant subsets of information. And when users find focused, fine-sliced aggregators rather than generalized ones, they get better results and dig deeper into the long tail. That's the power of applying long-tail principles across industries. The opportunities are everywhere. Long-tail rules. Creating a thriving long-tail business comes down to 2 simple imperatives. Make everything available and help customers find it. First challenge is clearing rights. When fewer than a dozen films from 6,000 submitted to Sundance get distributed, the rest often can't legally be shown to outside festivals because their music rights haven't been cleared. Similar issues lock away classic music, video games, and decades of TV archives. Till we solve the rights clearance at industrial scale, legal restrictions will remain the primary barrier to growing the long tail. The second element is moving quickly through smart recommendations. Netflix customers rent 7 DVDs monthly, 3 times what brick-and-mortar customers buy, because personalized recommendations drive demand down the long tail. This creates cultural diversity, reversing a century of distribution scarcity and ending the tyranny of the hit. He's identified 9 rules for successful long-tail aggregators. To lower costs, move inventory centrally like Sears and Walmart, use virtual inventory like Amazon Marketplace, or go digital like iTunes. Let customers do the work through peer production, Wikipedia, eBay, Netflix reviews, and self-service Google ads. All are examples of crowdsourcing. Think niche. Offer multiple distribution methods because one doesn't fit all. Provide one product in many formats, music as albums, tracks, ringtones, or videos. Price variably. Rhapsody found that having prices triples sales. Finally, lose control. Share information transparently. Think and, not or. Offer everything. Trust the market to sort it out through collaborative filters and ratings rather than pre-filtering guesses. And understand the power of free. Digital costs are near zero. So free samples, freemium models, and free advertising-supported content attract massive audiences, converting small percentages to paying customers. In abundant markets, costs follow digital economics downward. The rules are simple. Availability, discoverability, and abundance win. So the long tail of marketing. We've been talking about one of the most profound shifts in how marketing actually works in the modern world. And in this segment, he starts with a story that perfectly captures why everything changed. Back in 2006, the advertising agency Campbell Ewald faced a real problem. They needed to sell Chevy's Tahoe SUV, a massive gas guzzler, at a moment when gas prices were skyrocketing and environmental consciousness was growing. Traditional TV commercials, they weren't working anymore. People were ditching cable, skipping ads with TiVo, and tuning out the whole system. So Campbell Ewald did something radical. They launched ChevyApprentice.com, an online contest inviting regular people to create their own Tahoe commercials. Users got video clips and editing tools. The company expected enthusiastic brand advocates to submit professional-looking ads. What they got, though, was far more interesting. Over 30,000 entries came in. Some were pro-Tahoe, but many were subversive, clever, mocking entries that said things like, "Summer? Get used to it," and "What would Jesus drive?" Brutal criticisms that went viral on YouTube, sometimes outpacing official Chevy content. But the crucial part was this. Chevy didn't take them down, they left them up. And that decision was brilliant. The campaign attracted 629,000 visitors who spent over 9 minutes on the site. 2/3 of them clicked through to Chevy.com afterwards, and the sales results? By March, Tahoe captured nearly 30% of the market. Inventory that had been sitting for months suddenly moved in 46 days. The lesson here is essential. In today's fragmented market, you can't control what people say about your brand anymore. Consumers dictate the dialogue, and the smartest companies stop trying to command the narrative and start listening to what people are already saying. They amplify influential voices, they engage authentically, and they accept that criticism is part of the conversation. Now, when criticism does come your way online, and it will, you've got limited options. Trying to edit Wikipedia entries yourself, you'll get caught and publicly shamed. Instead, respond directly to bloggers. When someone praises you, send them a genuine thank you. Create an advocate. When someone criticizes you, respond publicly in the comments, and ideally, have someone close to the product respond. Product manager beats a customer service representative every single time. It shows you're taking the feedback seriously. But there's a hard truth here. You can't manipulate your way out of a bad product. Look at Hollywood. Studios used to release mediocre films, banking purely on marketing power to pack theaters before word got out. Not anymore. Bad movies get exposed instantly through fan sites, blogger reviews, test screening reports. Bad to good word of mouth spreads faster than marketing budgets. Second weekend box office drops have nearly doubled because consumers now have access to diverse opinions and insider information. Take Jeff Jarvis's famous Dell laptop disaster in 2005. His blog posts about terrible customer service sparked a wildfire. Thousands of angry customers recognized their own experience in his words. Dell Hell went mainstream. It forced Michael Dell himself to intervene personally. The company transformed completely, implementing customer-centric reforms, monitoring blogs for problems. Dell went from oblivious to best practice in listening to what the long tail of consumers were saying. Microsoft's story shows how this shift works when you get it right. In 2003, Microsoft had an image problem. Antitrust clouds, a flatlining stock price, Google stealing the cool factor, and the company's public face was basically two guys, Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer. You couldn't fix that with advertising. A platform evangelist named Len Pryor saw developers increasingly turning to Linux and open-sourced alternatives. He'd run an experimental blog at a developer conference that exploded in popularity. His insight? Overcome fear through transparency. Understand how things actually work. So he proposed Channel 9. Launched in April 2009, Channel 9 posted unvetted, largely unedited videos of Microsoft engineers talking about their actual work. No lawyers, no PR, no marketing spin. Executives were terrified, but it worked spectacularly. Day 1, 100,000 viewers. Within 6 months, 1.2 million monthly visitors. Today, 4.5 million. Microsoft then unleashed 4,500 employee bloggers across the company, each speaking authentically about their niches. I experienced this personally, he says, voting on minor design decisions for Media Center software, then seeing my preferences actually appear in the final product. That's genuine engagement. That's loyalty you can't manufacture. This transparency extends to product themselves. One chocolate bar company let customers scan codes to trace beans from specific fields to store shelves on Google Earth, watching videos at each step. That transforms a commodity product into something special. People willingly pay more when they understand origin and impact. The rise of organic and artisanal goods reflects something bigger: the mainstreaming of niche markets. The web acts as a marketplace of opinion, not just products. Online marketing fine slices consumer groups and leverages authentic word of mouth. The era of one-size-fits-all 30-second commercials is ending, and this revolution is just getting started. Desktop printers, currently around $5,000, turn digital files into physical objects. Of course, 3D printers are now available for as low as $200. As prices fall, like laser printers once did, they'll enable home manufacturing of nearly anything in quantities of one. Design files will be aggregated and delivered via fiber optic cable, materialized at home. The explosion of choice that transformed entertainment and information will extend everywhere. That's the ultimate long tail of things, the infinite aisle where everything becomes possible. So how does it wrap up here? Since the long tail was first published, something remarkable happened. It became a bestseller itself. Ironically, a book about the power of niches topped the New York Times bestseller list and became #1 in China. What truly excited him as the author was seeing the theory applied far beyond what he'd imagined, from Christian homeschooling to fashion, travel, food, and even alcohol. Take Anheuser-Busch, which created an entire division called Long Tail Libations. They expanded from 26 beer brands in 1997 to 80 by 2007. Everything from organic beers to gluten-free Redbridge made from sorghum. It's a perfect example of how niche markets thrive when companies can control the distribution and serve specialized consumers. Another fascinating application emerged around global culture. Consider cricket fans scattered worldwide who couldn't watch matches because broadcast TV only served concentrated audiences. Streaming video changed that, reuniting distributed communities around their shared culture. Same applies to soccer, rugby, and American sport fans abroad. But he wants to clarify a major misunderstanding. The long tail doesn't mean the end of hits. There are 3 types. Type 1 are authentic blockbusters, Coldplay, the World Cup. That stays big. Type 2 are synthetic, heavily marketed flops that crash fast. And Type 3 are grassroots hits rising through the word of mouth. In our new world, Type 1 hits continue thriving. Type 3 hits flourish because the web amplifies word of mouth. And Type 2 suffers. It's not the death of hits, it's the rise of a new kind. For producers, the long tail rarely promises direct riches. But blogs build reputation, and MySpace bands drive concert attendance. Of course, that's replaced by all social media now. The real currency is attention and recognition. The long tail doesn't cure obscurity, it diminishes it, creating a richer, more vibrant culture for all of us. So that brings us to the end of part 2 of The Long Tail, Why the Future of Business is Selling Less of More by Chris Anderson. Chris Anderson's examples may come from an earlier generation of digital platforms, but the underlying lesson has only become more important. As choice expands, value shifts from simply creating or distributing more products to helping the right people find the right solution. Today, AI is accelerating that shift by becoming the filter, recommender, and increasingly the guide between customers and the marketplace. The opportunity is enormous, but so is the challenge. It's no longer enough to be good at what you do. Your expertise must be clear, your value must be understandable, and your product must be easy for both people and AI systems to discover it and trust it. You can find more episodes, articles, and resources at InnoGuide.net, where I explore how systems thinking, innovation, and AI can help organizations build better products and make better decisions. I want to thank Steve McIntyre for producing this episode, and most of all, I want to thank you for spending your time with me today. Till next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and stay curious. That's a wrap.